My name is Nadav. I'm a great-grandmother, a grandmother, a mother, and I'm very proud of my children, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Primarily, I spent my formative years in Ghana and Nigeria, and I came to the UK with my parents, and it was kind of a cultural shock to me because I was used to being amongst loving and good people. That was my whole experience. And so it was a very hostile environment when I came to the UK. And I found that the relationship between my mother and father was a forbidden one because my mother was European and my father African. So the children from that relationship, myself and my three brothers, were considered to be the devil's spawn in a very short way of expressing it. And so we suffered the consequences of being people that shouldn't exist because it was a kind of taboo, and I think related to, Brahmanism and the Hindu system and apartheid and all these sort of racialized structures. And but one of the things was during my childhood there, whilst growing up in the UK, I was seen very much as a sexual object, which was a surprise to me. And so my life felt threatened, constantly because of this kind of sense that I was a young girl, a young black girl, but considered to be prey. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and I think it made me very paranoid. And I have difficulties really trusting others, and I have difficulties in my confidence as a result of growing up in a very negative, hostile environment. My parents, because they had African cultural beliefs, and I was the oldest child, although a girl, and I had brothers, I was considered to be equal to them, which was really strange in an environment of white supremacy where girls of my same age were considered to be less than boys. So I kind of grew up in a very patriarchal culture after I left Africa. And so there were very high expectations of me. So while I was at school and expected as a black girl to know nothing and never succeed, my parents saw me as a young woman with great potential, and they were very proud of me, and it was kind of a contradiction for me. I studied a lot because my parents insisted on it. It wasn't anything that I wanted to do. But the race construct really, because I knew it wasn't true, it couldn't be true because my mother and father had produced me and everything was all right and they cared for each other, and I grew up in a caring family, a loving family. I've always known that race is the foundation of our human experiences. I never knew when it started, so that was something I really wanted to study. And I didn't know if it would end, but I always felt that I was a person that could end it, because it wasn't true. I felt, because of my experiences, that I had something to say. And Margaret Busby, who wrote the book Daughters of Africa, who was the first black publisher, woman publisher for that matter, in the UK, she wanted me to write a story in this book, very profound. It's two anthologies of at least 100 women in both books. And she asked me to write my story. I didn't think I was capable, but I was totally honoured. And I wrote about sex and race growing up in the UK, my own personal experience with my family and the struggles that they went through, and my survival. So that's where Sex and Race comes from, is my real life experience that was wanted. And as Dr. Aya Sakai always says, we must tell our own stories. And I feel that that was truly a story about me. I had written a book that was about the stories of women who had chosen to support the supplementary school movement in the UK, and they wanted their children to know their African origins, who they were, their cultural identity. And I was one of the parents who helped to start a school with my friend Carmel Cameron, a wonderful sister. I love her till today. We're still in communication, even though we're thousands of miles apart. And we set up the school during the whole movement, and it dawned on me in collecting data about the schools that it was these mothers who really ran the schools, used the schools, wanted the schools. And so I wrote about the women who chose to send their children to these schools, and it was really great because they were women who didn't think that they were extraordinary or anything at all. They're about people who may never be known. We do admire our ancestors, we do admire the people that we learn from, we give them great respect, but sometimes because we live in patriarchies, racial patriarchies, we sometimes forget the Black woman, and the darker she is, the more we forget her and the more vulnerable she is to the racism and sexism that she has to live through. In meeting Dr. Asante, I was so honoured because he came from a perspective that fitted in, that I could learn from to develop my own perspective. And so in writing the book, Being Human Being, which is dismantling the race discourse, is very important because that's my whole life. Dismantling lies and hypocrisy, and using a cultural analysis and using the Afrocentric theory, paradigm, meta-theory to be able to embrace all of that and be centered in Africa, which we all come from, of course, and that's part of the book, to know that humanity was born in Africa and that our divisions are based on cultural orientations. And, from a Jopian perspective, there are really two cultures, one where the woman and the man are considered to be respectful to each other, and another culture which came thousands of years later, where the woman is dominated by the man, and this is considered to be justice, but it is the first hierarchy which led to the construction of race as a hierarchy.